up, y'all? It's your boy JTMM, aka Just 10 More Minutes, aka the Freakin 10, back with another Sabaton history reaction with Night Witches. Now, this one really had me intrigued because when you watch the story of the Night Witches, especially watching that first one, and learning that they were given these leftovers, right? And then these planes that were, paper. And I use that term loosely, but, not the best planes in the world. They didn't give up. They didn't run and hide. They didn't quit their dreams. They said, hold my beer and watch this. And it really was one of the most intriguing stories that I've watched so far. And I love all the Sabaton stories. I think y'all already know that. That goes without saying. But this one is just one of those that really got me because it's such an underdog is the wrong term, but it's an inspiring story of no matter what you're given in life, just make the best of it. Prove people wrong. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Just prove people wrong. And yeah, I'm intrigued to get in this one. So with that being said, let's switch it up. Let's check it out.
When you think of the soldiers fighting the Second World War, you probably think of men with machine guns.
However, in our song Night Witches, we're singing about badass women in bomber planes.
The large-scale industrialization of the Soviet Union in the late 1920s and 1930s opened up the country's economy for women in the workplace, and there was indeed no job for which a woman could not apply. Soviet propaganda encouraged them to join the workforce and steer the great machines of modernization, and the most fantastic symbol of that particular age of machines was the airplane. Many were inspired by Soviet heroine Marina Raskova, who set world records for long-distance flights, showing what pilots and planes from the Soviet Union could achieve. Newly emerging and quite popular flying clubs were also a chance for many women to escape the monotony, or the poverty, of their homes and learn how to become an aircraft mechanic or even a pilot themselves.
Quick question for those. So they said 1912 to 1943. Were those her years of service, or was she truly 31 when she passed and was she killed in the war? I'm sure they'll get into it, but that's the first thing. I've seen them post a lot of dates like that in these histories, but I wasn't sure if that was truly like years of service in the military or if that was actually truly like. So just a quick question for y'all.
Fast forward to the summer of 1941. Weeks after the German invasion, hundreds of thousands of Soviet women flocked to the colors, enlisting as nurses, signalers, or anti-aircraft gunners. The experienced female pilots of the flying club served as instructors and advisors for male recruits, but were not allowed themselves to fly into combat. The argument was that there were enough male pilots available. Marina Raskova, however, was determined to make a difference. With her influence in Moscow's political circles as a hero of the Soviet Union, she appealed to Stalin himself and got permission to create 3 all-female flying units: the 586 Fighter Regiment, the 587 Heavy Bomber Regiment, and the 588 Night Bomber Regiment. Raskova was a natural leader, and her call for volunteers was soon answered by hundreds of young women from all over the Soviet Union hoping to break into the ranks of elite female pilots. By mid-October, as confusion and chaos swept Moscow in the face of the rapid German advance, Raskova had set up her training camp at the large aerodrome in the city of Engels on the Volga River. There, the women of the 3 regiments were to be trained with planes, engines, armaments, and aeronautical studies and military drills, while the college-educated women were trained as navigators. Those with factory or armory experience would work as mechanics. Naturally, all volunteers wanted to become famous fighter pilots themselves, but only the most talented and experienced pilots were accepted into the fighter regiment. They needed lightning-quick reactions, and the ability to remain calm in battle. The professional pilots with many hours of experience were put into the heavy bomber regiment, led by Raskova herself. Those with less experience were put into the night bomber regiment, but those women may have needed the greatest courage of them all.
God, I love this song.
The night bombers were to fly the Polikarpov U-2, a flimsy biplane compared to then modern dive bombers.
Okay, so sorry, Andy, for cutting you off. That was my question, because I mean, the way he was talking it up was a little bit different than the way it seemed to have been presented in the video of the flimsy and them just being volunteers. But this shows that they were trained as far as and accepted as navigators, as mechanics, and for the best of the best into the flight. So I think that would kind of be my only light criticism. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Sabaton now. Would be in the song, it just didn't really allude to that, because when they were talking about that, showed pictures of them like in the uniforms that were too big, and I'm sure he'll get to it. It really played that up more than being accepted as, mechanics and navigators and such, and also and maybe I missed something. I could be missing, but that's tiny little criticism there.
Been designed and manufactured since the late 1920s and was used most often as a training plane. It had two cockpits, one for the student and one for the instructor. It was a small and slow aircraft made from lightweight plywood and percale, which was finely woven fabric made out of cotton. It was cheap to manufacture, unimpressive and outdated, but nonetheless a reliable workhorse for transporting the wounded, dropping supplies, or reconnaissance flights. The Soviets nicknamed it the crop duster, or the duck, while to the Germans it was to be known as the sewing machine or the plywood Russ, since it was totally defenseless and too slow to outrun any of the German fighter planes. It could only operate in the safety of night. In fact, though, even small arms fire could bring it down fairly easily. But the overall situation was so bleak that even those little planes became symbols of hope and resistance. Over time, the women began to appreciate the simplicity of the crop duster, especially since the women of the heavy bomber regiment had to fly the Su-2, which was nicknamed the bitch because of how difficult it was to master. But despite Soviet theoretical ideology of equality between the sexes, Russian machismo was pretty merciless, wearing boots, tunics, and greatcoats way too large for them since they were designed for men. The women were constantly mocked and teased by their male counterparts for their lack of femininity. But this only hardened their determination, since to them, a soldier was a soldier. Raskova ordered the women to crop their hair, and the battalion's commissar forbade anything she saw as girl talk and prohibited any sort of flirtatious behavior. By late May 1942, they were finally equipped with enough U-2 aircraft to prepare for combat. By summer, they left the aerodrome for the southwestern front to meet the German advance on Stalingrad and the Caucasus. As Axis forces were advancing on Rostov, Raskova's night bombers hit the German ammunition and fuel dumps, the vehicles, and the ground troops. Now, it was the navigator's job to find the target and close in on enemy lines. Then the pilot would turn off the engine and silently glide through the night. The first planes would throw down flares to illuminate the targets, and the loads would be dropped. Then they would turn on their engines and escape before the Germans could fight back. The U-2s were converted to bombers by simple, at first improvised, attachments. A bomb load of up to 300 kilos was slung under the wings. Okay, this was not enough to inflict a lot of damage, but that wasn't the main purpose of the night bombers. They were to constantly harass the enemy, to deprive them of sleep, and wear them down to grant them no rest periods.
Yeah, so I was curious about that, because when you talk about a plane, and I knew paper was the wrong term, But when you're talking about a plywood plane like that, and even a woven fabric, how much weight could they truly carry? So yeah, they weren't carrying these bombs that were going to, you know, destroy camps, but man, they would annoy the living hell out of them. Hence the name Night Witches. This is great. It's everything I hope for. And I did, you know, that little criticism again. They showed exactly what they talked about in the video. So, you know, I really wish they would have talked about them being trained up a little bit more. At least in the lyric video, towards the end, maybe. But that's like a menace. That's not even a criticism. That's just a me hoping thing. Let's keep going.
And for that, the Germans hated them. After learning that the night bombers were usually piloted by women, they would give them their famous nickname, the Nachthexen, the Night Witches. Every morning, the women came back with red faces and bloodshot eyes. They rebuilt their lives around their nocturnal life, having dinner in the morning and going straight to bed. They were constantly tired and hungry, but they were sure proud of showing the Soviet Union that women could fly as well as any man. And with every successful mission, they earned more respect from the male pilots and officers. But that would not protect them from the constant danger they faced. They had no parachutes, since Soviet high command figured that in case of engine failure, the planes could simply glide back to Earth. This totally disregarded the fact that the percale cotton fabric and plywood frame burned like crazy. And if that ever happened, it was likely that both pilot and navigator burned to death. But to Soviet high command, that was still preferable to being captured alive by the Germans. In fact, those who were shot down or crashed behind enemy lines were expected to fight to the death, as capture was dishonorable to any Soviet soldier and would leave a stigma for the rest of their lives. Even pilots who were shot down behind the lines but hid and made it safely back to their own lines were interrogated and often condemned to death by the commissars. On January 4th, 1943, Roskova died in an accident on her way to the Stalingrad front.
Okay.
But the 588 was determined to live by her ideals. And as one pilot wrote, it was a time for bombing and bombing.
So it's interesting, right? So 43 told me that's when she died. Okay. I mean, 31, right? So think about that. So, you know, given command at such a young age as a woman at the time, man, I can only imagine the power that she had if she had the capability of going to Stalin himself and getting and convincing him to allow her to get these units. That's a whole nother story in itself. Wow. Yeah, you think about the burning of that fabric. I mean, just getting shot through and catching fire and going down. Yeah. I do. I get the whole, you know, crossing back into your own lines and being interrogated. But to me, that just shows that you were smart enough to outsmart the enemy. Let's put you back in a plane and get you back up there. I mean, crap happens when you're getting shot at, right? Especially in those type of planes. But a different mindset back then, different group of people.
The Soviet counterattack prompted the hasty withdrawal of the Germans from the Caucasus and gave the Night Witches more than enough opportunities to harass and attack the retreating troops. From the steppes near Stalingrad to the high mountains of the Caucasus, the praise for the Night Witches grew. The freezing winter nights through which they flew at high altitudes with open cockpits did not discourage the women from fulfilling their missions. In fact, only once were they forced to remain grounded for a time. On the night of July 31st, 1943, during the German counteroffensive on the Taman Peninsula in Novorossiysk, the Night Witches approached the German positions and noticed that the anti-aircraft batteries were strangely silent. Suddenly, flares lit up the sky. It was a German night fighter attack, and in moments, U-2 planes were falling out of the skies, burning to the ground. The survivors broke off, scattering back into the darkness. Such high casualties in one night were a shock to the regiment, but one that didn't last long. The war that eventually turned against the German invaders brought the witches further to the west, to the Kuban, to the Krim, to Belarus, to Poland, and eventually Germany itself. Sometimes they made up to a dozen sorties a night, with only a few minutes of breaks in between. There are many stories of those young women who came from many different backgrounds and who did share their own personal tales of heroism, tragedy, and idealism. We were young and fearless. The fear came later, one of the survivors would recall. Heroic achievements and accomplishments led to more heroes of the Soviet Union than any other Soviet bomber regiment, 23 by the end of the war, with usually at least 800 sorties made. After the war, and after the regiment was disbanded, their commissar, Yevdokia Rachkevich, took it upon herself to personally search for the crash sites of every last one of her lost flyers to provide an accurate history of the regiment and the women that served and fought with it.
Look at the medals. Look at that. And I only call effect to it because you're talking about a time where, yes, women were still looked and frowned upon during this time. But look at this. Look what they were able to achieve. And this is these are the, war is war, right? But these are the type of people that inspire. And I hope anybody that's got young daughters, yes, do we want our daughters out there fighting? For me personally, no. But look at what they were able to achieve. They had every single freaking deck stacked against them. And it's a Texas saying, but they literally looked at the men and said, hold my beer and watch this. And then they just totally annoyed the hell out of the Germans. I mean, how can you not cheer for a group like this? War is war, but I take the war part out of it, and I look at what their achievement was when their backs were against the wall and being told that, sure, go take the crappiest stuff that we've got, the uniforms that were too big, and now look at them, right? Fitting perfectly, the medals, just awesome.
Okay, badass women in bomber planes. That was a really good description, right? So how did you guys decide to choose this?
Actually, when we started doing research for heroes, this was one of the first that came up for us. Yeah, that's been in our what do you call it? Secret Sabaton archive for a while.
All right.
And we just thought it was a perfect way to open the album as well.
Yeah.
We have a tradition of doing something surprising for the first song, and I think that massive opening was a perfect way to start off the album.
Yeah, and then the tempo change into the
Oh
chorus.
yeah, sorry, you're right. Yeah, and we did something different there also with the chorus being half beat compared to the rest of the song, and which is something I really hate.
But if you hate it, why did you allow it to happen in this instance?
It's the only time I actually thought it worked.
Yeah?
We wanted that.
Whose suggestion was it? Who said, "Hey, come on, let's do this"? And you said,
Oh, I did that to myself.
"Oh, okay."
So, but no, I remember so clearly when we were doing the PR for this album. It's a couple of years ago now, but I was doing an interview and I was in the final stages of doing something else. I was in the studio. Interviewer was a bit nervous, I should say, and not used to doing interviews. And we had I think a regular 30-minute interview. I was on the phone. He asked me to tell something. Well, you have a lot of stories. Could you tell me something from the album, story-wise? And I started, I can make an example out of the first song. And I started telling the story of the Night Witches.
Okay.
And I got a little bit carried away, because I was proud of the song and the story. So I, got carried away. And I probably spoke for about 8 minutes about only that song and the story about it. When I was finished, it got silent, and then I hear, okay, and the next song?
Oh, man. Oh, God.
Here, whenever you're proud of something, right, you want to tell it, you want to present it. And so, I think we all can identify that, right? When we have something that we're proud of, a piece of work, no matter how big or small, it, we want the world to see it. We want everybody to see it because it's ours, it's our work. And that right there is just that look in his eye. We can all relate to that, right? I mean, this is where you separate just the person from the artist and you see a human being proud of their work.
That's brilliant. So now, what was the reception for Night Witches? I mean, was this because this is not something that's familiar to people?
No. The story in itself is fantastic, no matter if it would have been men or women.
Yeah.
The fact that it is women, it's a extra nice bonus, I think.
Yeah.
And
it's very Soviet Union too.
yes, and it's still a part of our live set, very popular with the fans and us as well. I think we have some of the coolest pyro and video stuff going on that song as well.
Absolutely.
So I actually really enjoy playing that because we all I guess go off stage as the live intro for that song starts, and I sing the intro off stage, and I just get running in on the first boom of the verse.
But I have a very important question that I'm pretty certain everybody, not only everybody who watches Sabaton history, but everybody who's ever seen Sabaton or listened to Sabaton wants to know. Now, Night Witches, right? They to avoid any outward appearances of too much femininity and stuff because of problems with the male soldiers and stuff. They all cut their hair really short. They all crop their hair, right? One, do you think any of them had your hairstyle?
I certainly hope not.
And two, do we have any pictures of you when you were a kid with the same? Did you have the same
I was born like this.
All right, Joachim, well, thank you very much for this today.
Thank you very much.
I always love talking to you about these songs. All right, well, we'll see you next time.
Thank you all.
Oh,
on
you
Sabaton history.
You freaking character.
All right, everyone, you know the drill. You click, 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 click. Get some subscriptions, check out Indy's other channels, become a Patreon. That's it. Get the fuck out of here.
Oh, love that son of a gun. And I don't know if it's the right time to say it or not, but, I cut my hair, but I couldn't help but notice that with a little bit of shaving and a little bit of trimming, I might be able to pull off Joachim for Halloween. What do y'all think? That's next week. I may or may not have already bought the glasses. But yeah, I'm thinking about going as Joachim for Halloween. That's just how much I like the guy. You see his personality. How do you not like it? Anyway, let me switch it up. I'll give you my final thoughts. So, again, I'll say it, and Indy touched on it, right? This is not a very well-known story, but it's so damn inspiring. And Joachim was right. It is more powerful at being women just because of the time frame and how powerful they became and well respected and well regarded. And it really showed they can do a lot of the same stuff, right? If not better for some of them. Oh, what a great song. And I think I may even touched on it in my cover or in my reaction to the song itself about the beat and the switch. And I'm glad Indy brought that up because yeah, it is different, but it just fits. And Joachim is right. It works there. And just that delivery. That's one of my favorite songs, just from a beat perspective, melody. Yeah. Great song. Anyway, with that being said, let me give you some shameless plugs. If you liked the video, hit that like button. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought. I'm working my way through the history one by one. We've got Attack of the Dead Men on Thursday. You know, if I get a chance, I'll record more and maybe double up so we can maybe catch up to where I do song, video, song, or song history. We'll see. That again is the goal. But again, I work full-time job and I've got 3 kids and a wife, so time is very little to me. Anyway, with that being said, my friends, I appreciate y'all stopping by and checking this out. For each and every one of y'all that check it out, I greatly appreciate it. If you're new to the channel, again, I release content every weekday. Monday, Sabaton Ginger Nightwish bonus video. Tuesday, Sabaton History, The Warning. Wednesday, Ginger Nightwish Sabaton bonus video. Thursday, Sabaton History with The Warning. And then Friday, Free For All Friday, where I basically take all the requests and start knocking them out. One of the busiest, if not the busiest reactor out there. My videos are still quality. I just go in, I do a one take so you get my true reaction. It's just the way it goes. Till then, my friends, always remember, if someone asks you to stop what you're doing, don't ask for 1 minute. Don't ask for 2. And if you ask for 5, I will hunt you down and ask you not to do that again. Anyway, I hope y'all have a great rest of day. And until then, just ask for 10 more minutes. I'm JTMM. I'm out.